Tommy Vicari.
Tommy Vicari.
Tommy Vicari, Hollywood's most respected recording engineers and music mixers.
Well, good afternoon, good day, wherever you might be joining us, friends. Just to remind you, you're listening again to Manny Kellogg, and we're talking life and music with Manny Kellogg today. And boy, do I have a fantastic show lined up. I got my, shall I say, 50 years old, 60-year-old friend in, and he's a legendary recording and mixing artist, engineer from Hollywood, Los Angeles, California. My good friend, dear friend, I'm so honored to have you, man. Tommy Vicari, how you doing, man? Thank you for coming. Say hello to my people and let's talk, man. Let's just have some fun.
Well, thank you for having me. It's always nice talking to you. We talk to each other every now and then on the phone.
Yeah.
By little chit chats, but we've never really done anything formally. So this will be kind of fun. We've got a ton of stories. I don't know how much time you got, but but we can start at the beginning if you like, and then and we'll see where it goes.
I'll just dive right in, and the first thing my listeners and guests would like to know: where are you from, and who were some of your influences, man?
Oh, from when I was a little kid, my mother was a big band singer, and so in our house, music was playing all the time. You know, Ray Charles, Frank Sinatra, Tony Bennett. Music was. I really related to Ray Charles a lot, and and then and then of course as I got older, I got into all the Phil Spector records, and then of course when I was a teenager, the British invasion and all of that. But I kind of liked all kinds of music. I mean, I liked Roger Williams and Floyd Kramer and pianist, and I liked a lot of stuff. I never really was, I guess when I was a teenager, I was kind of into, what teenagers were listening to at that time, but I did always appreciate Tony Bennett and Barbra Streisand, and it's funny because I ended up working with a lot of these people, so it was what happened was I was born in Erie, Pennsylvania. One day, my it's a little town outside Erie called Northeast. I guess they couldn't figure whether it was north or east. I don't know what it is, but it was one red light and you were out of town. And so one day my dad said, get in the car, and we went to California. And so, and a twist of fate. I mean, if I hadn't have got in that car, I don't know what I would be doing. We wouldn't be talking right now, probably. I'd probably be working at Welch's Grape Juice or General Electric, building steam engines or something. But in high school, I wasn't really, very good at that, but I did always loved music. I always loved music. I played piano, barely, but I did take lessons, and I was kind of lazy. I never really would learn to read. I just kind of played by ear, and I guess that's why it helped me in what I eventually ended up doing. But when I was in high school, a friend of mine was working at Capitol Records in the mailroom, and he was quitting, and he said to me, and it's interesting because I couldn't remember how I got this gig,
Yeah.
how I ended up at Capitol Records, So, but turns out a few years ago, I found out he told me, "Do you want the gig?" And so, yeah, I got it, and I was delivering mail in the mailroom, and then I would deliver in the Capitol Tower. I would collect the mail and deliver it to the tower, and then the mailroom was right next to the recording studios. So I would go down there and I would kind of, peek in the door and stuff like that. And there was a producer named Nick Venet, and Nick Venet did the Beach Boys. He did the Linda Ronstadt and the Stone Ponies, and he did a lot of records for popular records for Capitol Records. And one day I asked him, I said, "Listen, can I come in and watch?" So what I ended up doing is I'd work from 8 to 5, and then from 6 to midnight, I'd go into the studio and hang out. And I watched Nancy Wilson and H.B. Barnum and Linda Ronstadt and anyone that was recording down there. I would just, I just kind of lived down there. And then for one reason or another, the mailroom was kind of a little clique, I mean, it was a little clique, and I won't go any farther than that, but I wasn't in on that clique. And so they kind of transferred me out to data processing, which was about as far away from the record business as you could get. And so I ended up hooking up with a producer who had worked at Capitol Records, and it had an independent little company. Didn't do anything, but I was in charge of going to get material, Jimmy Webb tunes and stuff like that. We had an office, we had a secretary, and basically he was a hustler, and he would he would get money from rich women, and he would keep his office open, and it always, at the end of the month, we'd always have to get more money to pay the rent and stuff like that. But anyway, our secretary, this elderly lady, she had a daughter, and the daughter worked for A&M Records, and it was Jerry Moss's secretary. So she said, I could get you an interview with A&M. I said, okay. So I went down there, and there was another elderly lady named Hildy. And I went in there about 20 years old, and she says to me, "Okay, what would you like to do?" And I said, "Well, I want to be a producer." She says, "Well, I can't help you with that, but there is an engineering program here, and it's a 3-month trial period. And if you last the 3 months, and if they feel you have an aptitude for this, you can become an engineer, but don't tell them you want to be a producer." So I said, okay. They hired me, and for 3 months I didn't sleep, or I barely left the studio. And at that time I had a house on stilts in the Hollywood Hills, overlooking the Hollywood sign, for $300 a month. And I had driving a Volkswagen convertible, 1960 Volkswagen convertible. Gas was 19 cents a gallon, and and so I split the house in the hills with my roommates, so it was 150 apiece. We were making $80 a week as an intern at A&M, but if you worked overtime, and that's where we made our money, if you were over 40 hours, you got overtime, and that's basically what we lived off of. So it was, that's how it started. And then I worked there as an apprentice for 2 years, getting coffee, setting up tape machines, moving tape machines. They didn't allow you to set them up. They wouldn't allow interns to set up the tape machines because they didn't want you to screw it up.
Right.
So I would, you call maintenance, and they would come and do it. So there was this one engineer that I worked with named Hank Sakala, who did, the Monkees, and he did Lalo Schifrin, and he did Tapestry with Carole King, and he did, he was Italian, and he said to me, "You come with me, kid. I'll take care of you." And so a lot of the things that I learned from Hank, but I also learned from Ray Gerhardt, who did the Carpenters. I learned from Dick Bogart, who did, Harry Nilsson. I learned from Henry Louis, who did Joni Mitchell. These were this is the A&M was the center of the universe.
That's right. Time. That's right.
So every day you went to work, it was, Barbra Streisand, Studio A, Sergio Mendes, Studio B, Herb Alpert, Joni Mitchell, C, Cat Stevens, Joe Cocker. Humble Pie. It was just an amazing, amazing place. I couldn't wait to get there. And I didn't, and I tell you, I said I went to work and I went home 4 years later. And so getting to the point where you and I met, it was, I worked there for 2 years and I never engineered, but I made sure everything was, when Hank sat down in the chair, everything was set to go. He didn't have to do anything. I set the studio up. Got the mics. I ran the tape machines, everything. I took care of everything. And he would tell me things like, you don't have an opinion unless somebody asks you, And the best thing he ever told me was, and to this day, it's the truest thing anybody ever told me. He says, you can be replaced and you will be replaced. And that's pretty true.
That's in any situation, man.
That's in any situation.
That's right.
You can be replaced and you will be replaced. And once you understand that, then you can have fun,
On that note, Tommy, who are I know you're a Grammy Award winner, Emmy Award winner, and that just goes over so many years and artists. So let's talk about some of the artists that you have worked with and are working with. Because you just said, you mentioned Barbra Streisand, you mentioned all of the people that used to come into the A&M studio, which I remember very well. But I want to know, who were some of the artists that you worked with in your 60, 70-year period in being an engineer and master recorder?
Well, I started in 1970, so it's about, well, I guess it is, it's about 50 years or so.
Okay.
But I'm not sensitive about that. I'm just saying.
I didn't mean to put no years on you, brother.
No, it's the years are there. Don't worry. Well, how we met was after 2 years. I had always felt that I was never going to sit in the chair unless I knew I could sit in the chair and I could do what these guys were doing. I learned from everybody there. I picked up. Hank Sakala used to say I was a sponge. I just soaked up everything that I did gigs no one wanted to do, and just to do it, and I never really did anything of any substance until one day I walked into the studio and Sandy Smart, the lady who was running the front office, said to me, Tommy, you want to do this session? Nobody wants to do it. I said, what do you mean nobody wants to do it? I said, well, who is it? They said, well, it's Billy Preston. I said, what do you mean nobody wants to do Billy Preston? I said, are you kidding? He's the fifth Beatle. What do you mean? They said, well, nobody wants to do it. Do you want to do it? So that's how that happened. I just walked in and we start. I set everything up and which is what I did for most of those records. I pretty much, if he needed a harpsichord or he needed a choir or he needed a string arranger or a horn arranger, I would hook it up. And which was not really my job title, but I thought, I can help you. I love doing this. And it was kind of like producing, it was, it was giving everything he needed to do what he needed to do, so that's how that happened. And then I started working with, I worked with Paul Williams. Paul Williams was, wrote all those songs. We've only just begun.
Yeah.
And then he introduced me. He was doing A Star Is Born, and one night at his house, he tells me, he says, Barbra Streisand's been saying your name for a month. I said, what do you mean, saying my name? What? She says, well, because you're going to do this movie. And I said, well. So I did the movie. I did that, and then that led to. I sent a list of the artists, but at A&M, I had a lot of clients. I had I met Jeffrey Osborne there. I started working when he was working with LTD. I started to work. I worked with Cat Stevens in a record called Catch Bull at 4. I worked with Chaz Chandler was producing some band called Chaz Chandler was produced Jimi Hendrix. He was doing a group called Slade, and I did that. And then I had a client that was from British Columbia. At that time, there were these artists from British Columbia, Terry Jacks and Susan Jackson, and there was a company called Haida Records, and I would go all of their records released in Canada, and they were in British Columbia, and so I did all of those, and then of course the biggest thing I did was one day my roommate came in and said, I want you to listen to this tape. And so I'm in studio A, and I play it, and it's Gino Vanelli. And so he said, what do you think? I said, well, I think it's great. I think you should put it out. And he says, no, we want to redo it. So what happened was Herb, they wanted Herb to produce it. And Herb did, and they did a record called Crazy Life. And the record's a good record, but for some reason or another, it didn't happen. And so the next record, Herb Alpert gave us creative control. And so at 22 years old, he gave us creative control to go and to do this record. So I recorded the record in Studio A. These people, by the way, were, living at my house. They were, this is stuff that you do when you're young, and it was, you should never have done, but you thought, okay, right. I'm gonna bond with these people because I'm helping them out, right? No, they're not your friends. They have an objective, and I tell kids this all the time. They're not your friends. Okay, you meet people that become your friends, but the artist is basically, if it's a hit, it's them. If it's a flop, it's you. So anyway, we did the record, and at that time A&M, their mix rooms were really not that great. They had 604s on pedestals, and you could move them around. And as and so they were carpeted rooms. They were like anechoic chambers. They were really dead, And so and then the consoles were radio consoles, basically. They had high and low, and that was it. That's where we mixed Billy Preston on those consoles. So anyway, I finished the record, and then a friend of mine, Armin Steiner, who was an amazing engineer and did Neil Diamond and the Turtles, and he was Barbra Streisand and Helen Reddy, Bread. Yeah,
I remember Bread.
Yeah, all of those bands. He was an impeccable engineer. He had a mix room, and so I said I put the tape on in the mix room at A&M, and I played it back, and I went, listen, I said, so I rolled the tape up. I said, come with me. And I went to Armin's studio, and I put the tape on, and I played it through the speakers, and Gino said to me, what are we going to do? I said, you're going to go ask Herb Alpert if we can mix it here. He says, oh, no. I said, no, yeah, I can't do that. I don't, so I went to Herb Alpert and I asked him to do it. And he said, yes. And so we mixed the record there. We mixed 2 records there. Both of them got nominated for Grammys for engineering, best engineered album, 2 years in a row.
Fantastic.
Powerful People and Storm at Sunup. They both got nominated for Grammys. And so, and so at that point, after 4 years of working at A&M, which I still considered some of the best years of my life, it was the center of the universe. But I really wanted to know how to record orchestras, and I wanted to, I just felt like it was time to go. A&M tried to hire me back twice. They tried twice to hire me back. And it's a good thing I didn't do it, because, they ended up selling the company, and because they saw what was coming. They knew what was coming. They knew that, the end was near.
Yeah.
And as far as the record business was going. And so I made the decision to go to work for Armin Steiner for a year as a staff engineer. And then doing that, I ended up working with Michael Amardian, and I did 2 of his solo albums. I did, Cheryl Lynn. I did all kinds of records there at Sound Labs. And then I got called to do the guys in Gino Vanelli's band got a gig with Carlos Santana, with Santana. So they called me they called me to go to, Bill Graham called me to go to work in San Francisco on Santana's record. And while I was there, I was staying at the Miyako Hotel. And while I was in the lobby of the Miyako Hotel, and this guy walks up to me and says, and it's George Duke. And George Duke says to me, you and I are going to work together. And I thought, I really didn't even know who he was. I mean, I didn't know. And so he was in the Mothers of Invention. I mean, he was an amazing producer and keyboardist. I mean, one of the best I've ever worked with. And there's been a few, so anyway, I ended up working with George Duke for 5 years as a staff engineer for him completely.
Wow.
And so we did, Jeffrey Osborne, we did the Blackbirds, we did Sister Sledge, we did Denise Williams, we did, it just goes on and on. There are some, in between that, I had a company with Philip Bailey of Earth, Wind and Fire. We had a 5-record deal with Epic Records as a production company. And we produced a group called the Daz Band. And then we produced another group called Splendid.
I remember.
We had another group called Free Life. We had another group. And then Warner Brothers called me to, my wife, again, at the Miyako Hotel. I was sleeping, and Warner Brothers called me and said, we're going to send you a tape, and we want to see if you'll be interested in doing this. So I'm in bed, and my wife comes into the bed. She gets the tape, puts it in my little car, drives around San Francisco, and comes back to the hotel, and she comes into the bedroom, and she taps me. She says, get up. I said, what? What is it? What? She said, just get up. So she puts the tape into the I had a boom box there, play music, and it's Prince's demo tape. And I said, who's this? She said, this is who Warner Brothers wants you to produce. So I called my accountant, basically. He wasn't a manager. I said, I want, call Warner Brothers, work this out. I want to do this. So he calls me back and he says, the deal's not right. You shouldn't do this. I said, just work it out. I don't care what the deal is. I want my name on this record. Okay, this kid is happening. Well, how do you know? I just know. Okay, I know. And so we did, and I spent 6 months living in the same house with Prince, and he played every instrument on that record. I got Graham Lear's drums for him. I introduced him to Sly Stone. I introduced him to Chaka Khan. I introduced him to fucking Sheila E. I mean, it was I did everything I could to help this kid. But the point
Yeah,
was is
yeah,
he didn't want me there. He didn't want me there. He wanted to fire me. If it wasn't me, it would have been somebody else. And I think it was a good thing, because if I had succeeded at that age on that level, they might have found me in the elevator with them. You know what I mean? I
yeah,
think
yeah.
I think that when you have that kind of success at that young of an age, I think you're not prepared to handle it. You're not prepared.
Exactly
So
right. Yeah.
he did as long as he could, and then what happened. And frankly, I told the guy who did the documentary, which they have not released, by the way, I said, you better be careful what you say about him, because it's kind of a cult, and if you say anything negative about him. He says, well, they're going to come after me. Well, they haven't released that. They refused to release the 6-hour documentary. Now, I didn't say anything bad about him,
Right, right, right.
because I basically love the kid. I have a story I can tell you about when I met him, and all of that, which we don't need to go into all of this, but it's true. I was the only producer he ever had. And then when I got the record, he used to erase my name off the tape box. It said Tommy Vicari, producer Tommy Vicari, and Prince, or Prince and Tommy Vicari. And he would erase my name off the box. And I said, what? Give me a
Why
little.
they do that?
Because he didn't want me there. He didn't want me there. He didn't want a producer. And so to this day, they have done everything they could to just eliminate that album. That album just doesn't exist in any of the memorial memorial publications. The record just doesn't exist. People don't even know. They think I Want to Be Your Lover is the first record he ever did, but I have a whole album that I did. I recorded and mixed. And so when I heard the first single come out, first of all, I get the record and it says, now they told me it was a co-production. I get the record, it says executive producer Tommy Vicari.
Yeah.
Produced, composed, arranged, performed by Prince. So what was I going to do? I'm going to sue Warner Brothers? What? So then I hear the single on the radio, and he remixed it with somebody else. And it was awful. It didn't work. But 10 years later, on his greatest hits album, he put my mix on there, and he put my name on it. And I figured that's as close as he could get to an apology, and I took it as such,
At least he did try to come back and make it right. That's what it sounds like.
Yeah, it sounds like it, but he never reached out. I did have one correspondence with him, but it wasn't very productive or anything like that. He said to me, did you ever try to find out who I was? And I said, well, I could ask you the same question, did you ever try to think? And I said, and the other thing is, it really doesn't matter now, unless you want to know about me, because he knew I was doing George Duke, and he knew what I was doing, and he had to have Patrice Rushen. I hired Patrice Rushen to do the string arrangement on Baby. That's how they met, and so I entered, I remember when Sly came to the record plant in Sausalito. Sly came in, says hello, and I'm introducing Sly Stone to Prince. And I wish I had a camera at that point, and I could have taken that photo, because I still have it in my brain. I can see it today.
Yeah,
I thought,
yeah.
well, this is the new being introduced to the future, to the past, and so That's a whole area we could spend a lot of time on. But if you want to keep going, we can.
Well, what I would like to do, uh, I would
Because there's
like.
a lot, out of the record business. There's a lot of other things that I did when the record business died here, and I went to Italy for 14 years, and I worked with very famous pop stars in Italy: Pino
Well,
Daniele, Eros Ramazzotti, Laura Pazzini, Raf. I mean, there was a whole other world out there. I thought, oh wow, it's not just the United States. There's a whole other world. The Latin American market is bigger than anything in the United States.
I believe
So,
that. Yeah. Tell me about. Let's talk about. Or I'd like for you to share with us about some of the award shows that you've mixed and recorded. Some of those big things that you've done after you left the record world.
yeah, well, that's one of the things. That's what I'm saying. That's one of the things. Now, if I had now, I worked with George for 5 years. Now, when you work with one person for 5 years, people stop calling you. They used to call me, Richard Perry and Warner Brothers, and they all called, but I was working. I had a job. Okay, now when you do that for 5 years, they stop calling because
That's right.
there's a whole new generation of people. So when George actually let me go, I guess because I was getting bored, and the other thing is, I mean, it really didn't affect my work, but it was a great gig. It was 1 to 10 every day, 5 days a week. It was a great gig. And so I was, making, I don't know, I worked up to $80 an hour. When I started at 50, he said to me, "What do you charge?" I said, "Well, $50 an hour." He said, "Jesus Christ, are you kidding me?" So anyway, that was low money. I mean, they were when I left, people were making $100 an hour and they were getting points. So I figured after 5 years, I figured, well, maybe I'll work for less money and you give me a piece of a point on this. Well, I guess he didn't want to do it, and that's fine. So when he let me go, so for almost 10 years, that phone didn't ring.
Hmm.
Okay, I used to walk around the house with the phone in my hand, and when it would ring, they'd say, "Hi, is Veronique there?" It's like there was nobody. There was my daughter. There was nobody calling. And then finally, I saw an interview with Tim Roth, who was an actor, and he said to me, "I'm an actor. I work for money. I work for no money. There's three reasons to go to work. There's the people, the project, the money. I have to have one of those three to go to work. If I want to work with the people, if I'm doing it for the money, or the project. If there's a project I want, if there's not one of those three, I don't go to work." So I started going to work after making $100 an hour for $100 a day. I mean, it was deep. It was, and
That's a big drop.
it's a big drop. And fortunately, I had a home that we could, borrow on, and I regret doing that, but it did keep us alive, and we're still living in it. But I had the house paid for. I mean, it was paid for, and so anyway, one day Quincy Jones called me. We won't go down this rabbit hole too far, but anyway, Quincy called me, um, and said, "What are you doing tomorrow?" I said, "Well, nothing." He says, "I want you to come to a meeting." I said, "Well, what is it?" He says, "Just come."
Hmm.
So it's the Academy Award breakfast, and everybody's introducing themselves, and this is 1997, and I'm standing there, and with there's a lady over here, and there's a man over here, and the guy says to me, "What are you doing?" I said, "You know what? I don't really know." And the woman over here says, "You're doing the whole thing." I said, "No, I'm not." She said, "Yes, you are." So I said, "Wait, wait, wait. I don't know how to do this. I mean, live television has never been on my radar. I don't know. I'm a studio guy. I control everything. And television, you can't control anything. It's a whole other thing. So I told, make a long story shorter, I said to Quincy, I said, I don't know how to do this. And Quincy said to me, "We'll figure it out, because you at your worst is better than them at their best." So I said, "Well, if he thinks I can do it, then I better figure it out, because
Yeah.
because there's not too many people that would give you that kind of responsibility if they didn't think you could do it." So
At the drop of a hat.
at the drop of a hat. So we worked really hard. We did it, and each year it got better and better. And I've been doing it for 25 years. 25 years. I've been nominated 25 times for Emmys, and I've won 8 Emmys. I've been nominated for 6 Grammys. I've won 2. I mean, when you're nominated against Thriller, who's going to win? I mean, but anyway, I've got Cinema Audio Society Awards, but anyway, okay. So then there's that. There's the Italian period. There's a Japanese period too, where for 3 years I was Japanese. I was doing Japanese pop music there, here, wherever. So then I was trying to think. This is not all chronologically in order, but I started to do. I guess what I neglected to tell you too is, then I started to do. I did a commercial for Ray Charles. They hired me to do a vocal for Ray Charles. And Ray came in, Ray had the paper bag with the $1 bills in it and all that.
Yeah.
And I knew he was only going to give me like 2 takes. I knew he was going to give me 2 takes. And I had the second engineer go out and yell into the microphone. And so he says, "You ready?" I said, "Yeah, I'm ready." So he starts to sing the first verse, and the level is really low, and I thought, what do I do? What do I do? Do I just leave it or fix it later? So I just took a shot, and I clicked the preamp, and the vocal just popped in, So so I had 1 2/3 of a complete vocal. And anyway, the guy that heard that, and then I mixed it, and the guy that heard that was Gordon Goodwin, and Gordon Goodwin said, "Who mixed this?" And I ended up doing 25 years of big band records, that have won several Grammys, and they're basically art records. They're really, records that nobody's really making. I mean, they're pieces. They're really works of art, and I mean, people criticize them because they're too perfect. I said, "Oh, well," I told that to Quincy. I said, "Quincy, people say I'm too clean." He says, "Yeah, and they say I'm too slick. So it's too slick and too clean." It's like, what do you want me to do? It's too good. Jeffrey Osborne, they used to tell him, the black department, say, "Don't use Vicari. He's too clean. You need to be, what do you want me to do? You want me to make it sound bad?" I mean, those Jeffrey Osborne records are immaculate. They're beautifully made records. They
are, yes, sir.
They're like Earth, Wind, and Fire records, or those are the records I loved, Earth, Wind, and Fire, and all the English records that were coming out that were just beautifully recorded, and those were I did a band called Orleans, a record called Dance With Me, and John Hall, the lead singer, called me and said, I said, well, what'd you think? He says, I thought it sounded like too much like Elton John. I thought, well, that's what I was going for. I'm sorry you didn't like it, but I thought it was really, I mean,
that's the sound you were trying to get.
That's what I was trying to do. I was trying to put you in that, he didn't want to be there. So anyway, then what happened was you let me know if we're going too long because it's a long. I'm an old guy. We One day I got a call in one of those periods where there was nothing happening, and my wife says to me, "Why don't you go to the AES show in San Francisco?" I said, "You know, I don't want to go. And you're talking to a bunch of guys with Ampex T-shirts, and after you say, "Hi, what are you working on?" There's nothing to talk about. It's like so. I get a phone call from this engineer, very famous engineer called Dennis Sands. He says, "What are you doing?" I said, "I don't know, man. I'm going to the San Francisco AES show, I guess." He says, "Well, you want to work?" I said, "Yeah, I want to work." He says, "I want you to sub for me with Thomas Newman." So I said, "Okay, okay." I was on a movie called Meet Joe Black, and they were going to record Erykah Badu.
Mm.
And so as an end title, and it was never going to make the movie, but they did it anyway, and it didn't make the movie. But what it did do is it introduced me to Thomas Newman, and after that, I ended up doing a movie called Road to Perdition. Then I did a movie called Angels in America.
Hmm.
Won 24 Emmys and one for best sound mixing, and then an Emmy for best sound mixing. Then I did Finding Nemo and Finding Dory and Wall-E. I did 19 years. That one phone call gave me 19 years of making movies, and I'm still making movies. Not
Fantastic.
even counting all the Disney theme park music. If you go to Disneyland now, everywhere you turn in that park, you're hearing my music that I mixed.
Is
Okay,
that right?
whether it's Marvel Land or whether it's the Pixar pavilion or whether it's whatever it is, it's all over the parades or the fireworks shows, all that stuff I've done. So the variety of things that I've done, if I had stayed at A&M, or if I had stayed with George, or if I had I mean, I would have never done all these things.
Right, right.
It's funny how life takes you. What was disastrous for a few years, you know, um, ended up being, the best thing. So
Yeah, yeah.
you really, it gets back to everything happens for a reason.
As you say that, Tommy, it kind of reminds me of where I'm at right now. I'm at a dry spell. I think I mentioned that to you once, and sometimes I get very down, in spirit. But you just said something to lift me up, man, and to keep me going. And I appreciate what you just said. You know, every dark spell can lead to something else. And I just gotta
Yeah,
grab
but
myself together, man.
you don't have to feel bad about that, because that happens to me too. That happens to me too. When I finish one thing, it lasts for a few days, and then I think it's a creative thing that we need to be doing things, um, and when we're not, we're kind of not fulfilled. I mean, it's not something that we should have more of a well-rounded life, because what I did learn in Italy is that we live around our work. In Italy, they work around their life,
Okay.
and that there's something to be said for that. There's something to be said for the fact that you're just not a one-trick pony. That you have a family, you have interests, you have other things that you can do. And the other thing is that I never took any of this for granted. I mean, maybe in the beginning, I thought, after Billy's record went number one, the first record we did, I thought, oh, nothing to this. No, 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 that was totally wrong, because that was Billy Preston. That
Yeah,
wasn't
yeah.
anybody. Could have hung those mics and it'd have been fine. But I really, someone told me the other day, well, what do you have to prove? And I said, you know what? I prove myself every time I go into that studio. I've never ever gone into a studio thinking I have it covered. I don't have it covered.
Okay.
There's somebody, I learn from all these kids, all the technology changes all the time. I learn from, I treat people with respect, and I get it back. And 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 um and I think that's what's rewarding about it. I listen to I come into this room, and I listen to some of the records that George Duke and I did, or Jeffrey Osborne, or Finding Nemo, or something. And I go, this is art that's going to be here when I'm not, and there's a great, I have a lot of gratitude for that. You know what I mean? I have a
Yeah.
lot. I mean, this guy Rick Beato has his best sounding top 40 records, and he picks Finding Nemo as number 8 of all time. Um, um, Not that that's his opinion, but anyway, it's a beautiful sounding record. It's a beautiful sounding movie, and I'm I put every bit of echo, I EQ'd I mixed it. It's me. Now, I didn't perform it, but I was a big part of that thing. It's just like we talked about the records we made with Billy, how I look at them now and I compare them to what Sly was doing, and Sly was funky as hell. But
Yeah.
sonically, we were right there, and I didn't really even know what I was doing at that point. I just was imitating Hank Sicalo and guys I had watched in the past. So
Right. Right.
I was, but I did learn, and you're constantly learning, and even at our age, we're still learning, and we still feel a loss or an emptiness when we're not doing what we've done our entire lives. So it's kind of natural.
Sure.
It's
Sure.
not something that but the thing is, Manny, we can't. For me, I try not to dwell on the past or on the future. Staying in the moment is a bitch. It really
In the
is.
moment. Yeah. Yeah.
Because you've got your knee hurts, your neck hurts. It's like all this stuff. My daughter says to me, I got to go to Germany next week, and she says, how are you going to do that? I said, I'll do it. I'll do it. Because some guy in Germany, he's opened a scoring stage, wants me to come over to open his scoring stage. He's a fan of mine, or been listening to it. And and the company wants to bring me over. So I said, okay, I'll do it. I mean, um, if he thinks enough about me, just like Quincy saying, figure it out. You know what I mean? It's like, if he thinks enough about me to want me to be there I'll go. It's not, what am I going to do? All I got to do is get on a plane, get off, and go to a party, and then come back. I'm working with a composer now named Nicholas Bertel. And Nicholas Bertel I met on a movie called The Big Short. And then we did Beale Street, and then we did Moonlight. Remember Moonlight? That was a big won an Academy Award for Best Picture.
I remember. Yeah.
And then we did, and then I just did a movie called Jay Kelly, which is coming out right now. I'm doing a whole series of music for the NBA. So like the NFL has its music, the NBA will have its music. And then we're going to do another movie with Ben Affleck, and as directing, So, look, I mean, am I doing? And then after I come back from Germany, I have to go back and work with Disney, So, look, it's been. I have nothing really to complain about. I'm not. I hear all this talk, about. When I was a kid, I thought, oh, I'd really like a millionaire. I'd really like to be a millionaire. Now they want to be billionaires. they want their own planes and their own fucking, their own. I mean, I just
Yeah.
want I just want my house and my studio, and I mean, I don't need to be a billionaire. I mean, I don't need to do
I hear you.
I mean, I don't know what it is. I think it's I've done more than I ever thought I could do. There was never none of this was ever on my radar. Although I did make it happen. I did make it happen. So obviously there was something deep inside that led me to walk into that studio that day and say, and she asked me, "Do you want to do this record?" Nobody wants to do it. I mean, think about the timing of all of it. You
Yeah,
know,
yeah.
I mean, it's so by chance. When I tell people I'm lucky, he says, "No, that's not luck. You did well, yeah, but there is a certain amount of luck to it. There is a certain amount of luck to it to be in the right spot." I was trying to when I was 17 years old, the Vietnam War was full blown. So what did I do? I went to enlist in the Navy because I thought, well, you get to wear bell bottoms and you've got you've got a girl in every port. I thought, I mean, and they didn't take me. They didn't want me.
Mm.
So I said, so my doctor said, how bad do you want to go? I said, well, I really don't want to go. I mean, I'm not dodging it. I went to enlist. They just don't want to take me. He says, well, then don't go. So I didn't. So if I had gone, where would I be then? You see all these roads that, these turns in the road that happen for a reason, I think.
Everything happens for a reason. If you don't mind, what I'd like to do is uh, take just a quick pause here, Tommy, and let the listeners know just who my guest is today. And again, I'm talking to my dear friend, old friend from years ago, uh, recording engineer, mixing engineer, Mr. Tommy Vicari, and I'm so glad he was able to be with us today, man. And Tommy, I thank you for being my friend for all these many years, and it means a lot to me. And I want us to keep going and growing, man. And as Quincy told you, keep figuring it out. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Yeah.
I want to dive right back in, man. With time is eating us up. I'd like for you to.
Maybe
I know
yeah,
you got.
maybe I was talking too long.
No, man, no. This is fantastic. But I want to move on to just a subject that I know you're familiar with. What are some of the most funniest things that you can talk about, man? I know you got some because we've shared them already.
Oh, well, every time you go in, I mean, the funniest things. Well, I mean, there's there was I told you the other day on the phone, the Sly Stone story, the
Yeah,
Sly.
yeah,
We were working in Studio B on a
right.
Friday night, and the assistant says to me, Sly Stone's on the phone, wants to talk to you. I said, wants to talk to me? So, I'm always kind of shocked when that happens, So I pick it up and he says, hey, listen, I'd like to come in and record. And I said, yeah, no problem. I said, we're working right now, but we could work this out for Monday. He says, no, I want to come in now. I said, well, I'm working now. He says, no, it's going to be, and he won't take no for an answer. And so
That's right.
he says, no, there's going to be a change of life if I can't come in tonight. And
Whoa.
I realized there was going to be a change in my life. So I said, okay. So you can work in Studio A or set up in Studio A. And at that time, Sly used to do everything in the control room. He recorded everything in the control room. And So I'm working with Billy, and I walk out Studio B, walk across to Studio A, and they got the grand piano up on its side, and they're moving it into the control room. Now, there's no way this grand piano is going to fit in the control room. And I stopped.
No way, no way.
Stop.
Yeah.
So I got them because Sly had all these guys, all these mob guys.
Yeah. I know what you're saying.
And so I go in there, and there's cables all over the floor, and he says, where's the clavinet? And three other guys yell, where's the clavinet? Where's the clavinet? Wait, let me. So I'm following cables to try to find the clavinet. It's like, and then the best part I remember is when he came. Billy said, Sly's coming. I said, oh, good. Okay, so about a certain time of the night, the door opens, and it's a chauffeur. So closes the door, and then Sly walks in, and he's wearing a complete white outfit with a white hat with feathers, and he walks through this control room, walks out the door, and in Studio B. So about 20 minutes later, the door opens over here. He comes walking in. He's dressed all in a blue outfit with a blue hat and blue feathers, and he walks out the studio door this way. So about 20 minutes later, it's a true story. Walks in the door, got a complete red outfit on. He changed clothes 3 times. It's like, I'm thinking, my God. So then at a certain point of the night, we never did record anything.
That was my next question.
No, nothing. And at a certain part of the night, they say, "Oh, we're going to go to Sly's house." This is.
I remember that.
This is 6 o'clock in the morning. Okay, and I'm sitting, and we get there, and they can't find Sly. So this was John Phillips' old house in Beverly Hills, beautiful Tudor style house, and he had a studio. But they didn't have the key to open the door, so they broke down. The guys broke the door.
Yeah.
Get into the studio. So I'll never forget, sitting there. It's me, Billy Preston, and Sly Stone with an 8-track, and Sly plays a little bass. He goes, "Oh, go to another track." I go to another track, and so, I never. There was no music ever recorded. There was nothing. We just didn't.
To this very day, nothing was recorded.
Nothing. Well, not with me. It didn't happen.
That's what I mean. Because I remember some incidents like that too. I'm with Billy Preston, Sly Stone, Bobby Womack, and myself. We were supposed to do this monster recording session at Sly's house. To this very day, it never happened, man. No. That would have been a monster. Never happened.
No. And
like you said, all them cats, everybody was running around, and nothing was getting done. Like they couldn't even find Sly.
No.
He just disappeared.
Yeah, it was. Listen, I love Sly Stone, but I never saw the genius. I never saw it. But when I did introduce him to Prince, because I did some work on Riots Going On, and then when he came up to the record plant, because he had a studio in the back called the Pit, and it was just a pit where the console was in the middle, and everybody sat around on these ledges, and they played, and they had a bed. Like the Rolling Stones tongue, they had a tongue, and there was a bed in there. I guess he could crash or do whatever he was going to do, but so he came in to visit, and I introduced him. The funny part of one of the things, the story. When I met Prince, they sent me to Minneapolis. He's 17 years old, they sent me to Minneapolis to meet with him. And so we were going to have a meeting in his apartment. So I get to his apartment. I don't know, it's about 7:00 at night. And I get there. In the apartment, there's 45. He had singles, 45s nailed to the wall. He had a poster of Chaka Khan on the wall. He had a waterbed and garbage everywhere. so I said, well, why don't we go out? so we go out, and so I said he wanted to go see Star Wars. So I went. We went to the theater, and because I was traveling, I had $100 bill. I didn't cash it, and so I gave it to the checker at the counter, and she says, "Oh, I can't cash that. Just go in. It's okay." So me and Prince are sitting in the first row. We're the only ones in the theater. Me and Prince, and then we're watching Star Wars as that spaceship comes over. And it was kind of fun, for at the beginning. But I told him what I told him was everybody was like really, what's the word, playing up to him. They were really being real careful about it. They didn't want to piss him off, or they want, and they're kissing his ass a lot. And I told him, I said at one meeting, and maybe I might have been a little arrogant or something, but I said, listen, I want to get this out of the way. I think you're great. Okay. I think you're great. I want to make this record. I want to make a great record. And that's the last time I'm going to tell you. Okay. Because I said, I made records before you, and I'm going to make records after you.
Right.
People say, oh, you can't talk to Prince like that. I said, well, why? Why can't I talk to? I mean, why? He's 17 years old. I'm trying to motivate him into a direction. We were in my car going to the session one day, and Superstition comes on the radio, and Prince is in the seat next to me, and he leans over, he turns off the radio. I said, "What are you doing?" He says, "I don't want to be influenced." I look at him, I said, "Too late. You've already been influenced. You didn't invent this shit."
Right.
And that's the way I talked to him. And I didn't see anything wrong with that. I thought I was giving him some wisdom that he could use, to put things in perspective,
Right.
But he didn't want to hear it. And so, and then, later on, years later, I found out, he wanted to fire me immediately. He just wanted to get, and by the way, Maurice White, they wanted Maurice White to do this. They wanted, there was Richard Perry. They wanted big producers to do this. And I was the one that he took, because I was the lesser of two evils, I guess, and so, at the time it kind of broke my heart, but then, you get over it. It's okay.
Yeah, you do. Hey man, I'd like to know, what are you currently working on? What are you doing now, Tommy? You got any things coming up quickly? I think you mentioned something about Germany.
I just finished the 20th anniversary of the Big Fat Band. It's a compilation of all the records we've done over the past 25 years, redone, in a more in a different context, kind of updated a little bit, and that's not going to come out to the beginning of the year. I'm working on, like I said, the NBA music. I'm working on a Disney theme park project that when I get back from Germany. I was supposed to be in London right now, but they on the Ben Affleck movie, but they moved it because I guess they're still working on the music. So
Okay.
there's that. There's the as far as award shows, there's the Oscars, which I get called for every year. And then I did things like the Lion King at the Hollywood Bowl. I've done, that's a live show with an 80-piece orchestra. But these are all things that are like way past what we did with Billy. These are, there was 4 pieces. These are like 8 pieces, choirs, and I mean, these are huge things, and that's kind of what I wanted to be able to do. I wanted to be able to do that, and so the variety of things that I do. And then I have a band that I've been working with for a long time, called World Goes Round. I just did a new single for them. These are the writers. This is Frank Musker. He actually wrote Freddie Mercury's "Too Much Love Will Kill You" before he passed away, so we did a remake of that. Brian May was one of the writers, and so we produced a new version of it, and it's going to be released in Italy. And then I did some Italian artists, a young Italian artist that came to America, and he said he wanted to do an R&B record. So I hooked him up with Jeffrey Osborne and Rod Temperton before he passed, and we did a record, and then nobody wanted it. I mean, it's the record business is just. I do it because I like to do it. I don't expect I don't expect anything from it. As long as I can pay the rent. I mean, I go from making, $2,000 a day to, $200 a day. I mean, it's like, what do you, when they ask me what my rate is, I say, well, what do you got? What do you, I mean, really, what do you got? And what do you want to do? Tell me what
you throw it right back at him. What do you have? What kind of money?
Every time I would tell them what my rate was, they say, "Oh, that's too much." I said, "Well, then why did you ask me?" I got to the point. I just said, "Why don't you tell me what you want to do and how much you got, and I'll tell you if I can do it. And if I find it interesting, I'll consider it. And if I don't find it interesting, I mean, because a lot of the music I hear, because of my advanced years, I don't really relate to at all. I enjoy making motion pictures. I do, especially if they're good movies. I have done really good movies, and so again, I feel fortunate and grateful for that. And if I can do a record, if I can do records that I feel that are unique, I will do it.
Yeah. Well, I want to thank you for taking time to mix my CD that couple of years back, man, and I get a lot of compliments on that CD to this very day.
Oh, good.
I got one more question for you, Tommy, if you don't mind, and then we're going to we're about coming really close here. What are some of the best shows that you can remember that you've done?
I think the best one, well, there's a few of them. There's a show called 6 Feet Under, which was on HBO. There's another one called The Newsroom, which was Aaron Sorkin. Then then the last one I did was Succession, which was a very famous television show, and I really like doing those kind of shows. They're series. The best one I did a show called Angels in America, which was a 6-part series with Al Pacino and Meryl Streep, and it won. Interesting story is it won. I was sitting at the Emmys, and I was sitting next to Ed Green, who was probably the most famous television mixer ever, and they kept playing the main title for this movie. It kept winning 24 times, and he turned to me and he said, "Didn't you record this?" I said, "Yeah." And it won for best sound mixing.
Fantastic.
But that year, scoring mixers were not eligible to get an Emmy, and that night they changed the rule. And from then on, I've won 2 other ones for Liberace, and I won one for there's I think I can't remember the other one, but anyway, I've won 2 other ones that weren't the Academy Awards because when you do the Academy Awards, they say, well, it's the show, it's not you.
I hear you. I hear you, man.
The Grammys or the Academy Awards. That's like, so
Yeah,
when you win for something because first of all, when you win, there's a lot of shows that are really good you don't win for, and then sometimes you win for something that's not that great, and it's fine. It's more fun to win than not to win. But there are shows that I thought, this is a good show. We should, I'm really proud of movies like Wall-E or Finding Nemo, Finding Dory.
yeah,
Road to Perdition, I think, is one of the great scores of all time, of Tom Hanks. And then, there's Cinderella Man. There's Saving Mr. Banks is an amazing story about Walt Disney making Mary Poppins, and the score is beautiful. Passengers was nominated for Academy Award. So those kind of things I really love. And when you're doing a series television, every week it's on. So every week you don't really see the show. You record the music and then they put it in the film and then you hear it.
yeah, right.
Interesting about that is like the first season it came out, the music was kind of soft. And then little by little, the music got louder and louder and louder. And by the end of it, by season 4, the music was a major part of it. It was really loud. And I said to the composer, I said, either we weren't very good at the beginning or they turned up the music at the end. And he said they turned up the music because the music was really, and when people find out that I did Succession, I'm telling young kids, they freak out. I mean, they really, it was that popular of a show, so
Right.
those are the kind of things that I enjoy because I don't know. I often go and I listen to the top 10 on Spotify and I'm going, there's nothing on here that I want to do. There's nothing, Anyway, there's a kid in France that just did a record that's basically a 70s record. It's really done really well. And so I don't know, maybe I think Bruno Mars maybe does pretty nice stuff. I mean,
Yeah.
Gaga, I like some of it. I think Gaga is the real deal. I think she's great, but I don't like all of the, it's basically dance music, but anyway, or it basically disco, I guess, only with, but it was.
I like Gaga when she teamed up with Tony Bennett.
That was
I
awesome.
thought they did some great sessions, man.
Yeah, I saw them at the Hollywood Bowl. I went to see
Yeah.
them. It was great. It was great. And I did the Sound of She did a version on the Academy Awards. She did the Sound of Music, a medley, which I mixed, and it was spectacular. It was just spectacular.
Yeah.
You can see it on YouTube if you like to see it. But anyway, listen, I know I kept you too long. I've kept you a long time, and
man, we've been talking about this a long time, and it finally came to pass. And I just want to say, man, thank you so much for taking time out to be on my show today, Life and Music with Manny Kellogg. And you have been listening to my good friend, recording and mixing engineer, master recording and mixing engineer, Tommy Vicari, legendary. You have had the pleasure of listening to him for the past hour. Just this is unusual to get Tommy Vicari to do this. And man, I'm just, again, I'm grateful to have you. I'm grateful to know you as a friend, that we've been together since 1970 now, and we're still talking. And I love it, man. I wouldn't give anything for it. I'd like to also thank the person that's sponsoring this podcast it's done by Diggs Entertainment. He's also my mastering engineer, and he's a fantastic young cat that's going to be, I hope there's been something that he can get from this, because he's in the same ball field, man. His name is Jay Diggs. Look him up. He's a good cat, young cat on his way to the moon. Again, I want to thank Tommy Vicari for being here, man. Love you, man.